Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, Episode 86.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 86 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Today's show notes page is outoforderjameskalita.com/86. Today's sponsor is Gift for Gun Nuts, giftforgunnuts.com, where you can get great gift ideas for the hunting and shooting enthusiast on your holiday shopping list. Head over to giftforgunnuts.com and you'll find great gift ideas updated daily from now until Christmas. And always want to invite you guys to subscribe and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. Really helps the show, really helps get us out there, really helps us reach that 1 million gun owner mark or listener mark. So today's guest is Patricia Harrold. Patricia is the president of Nebraska Firearms Owners, and now here's Patricia.
Patricia Harrold, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So, Patricia, you're the president of the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. Would you tell us a little about that organization?
Sure. We are a volunteer-based, completely grassroots, nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing the rights and freedoms of law-abiding gun owners in the state of Nebraska.
Wow. And so what's it like for gun owners in Nebraska? What's the political climate like there?
Well, it's really interesting. When we talk to friends and neighbors around our state, they have a misunderstanding about how red our state is with regards to firearms freedom. When you look at the other states that surround us, there's actually quite a bit more freedom with regards to firearms rights than exists in the state of Nebraska, which is really surprising to me because in the 80s, Nebraskans took initiative to actually amend our Constitution to even make it more clear that lawful use of firearms would not be infringed. And yet at the state and local level, we find our rights and freedoms often chipped away.
Wow, that's interesting in the 80s. As from what I've been learning, in the 80s there was a real anti-gun push, but you guys managed to have your Constitution strengthened during that time. Do you have any idea what was going on back then that you guys were able to do?
It was really, again, it was a grassroots initiative. There were issues at the major cities within the state that really caused issues for Nebraskans as they traveled through the state. And there was a great level of effort put on by people who eventually actually became the founders of our organization to educate our citizens that there was indeed an issue. And I love reading Article 1, Section 1 of our Constitution. I think it's one of the best and well-crafted and most clear enumerations of our rights. But basically, in a nutshell, it says, we have certain inherent and inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the right to keep and bear arms for security or defense of self, family, and home, and others, and for lawful common defense, hunting, recreational use, and all other lawful purposes, and that these rights cannot be denied or infringed by the state or any subdivision thereof. And one of the things that we work so strongly for in Nebraska is attempting to get our cities to understand that they're actually passing ordinances that are unconstitutional and infringing on our rights as citizens, and it keeps us really busy.
Yeah, sure. So it sounds like the challenge is that not even with that much strength in the Constitution, there isn't a specific preemption that stops the cities from passing these laws.
Well, what's really interesting is it's literally our unicameral. So we're a state that actually has one state-level government body rather than a Senate and a House. We have what is called the unicameral. And so we elect individual representatives for our districts, and it's those people who are supposed to be empowered to ensuring that our Constitution is followed, and yet we face those within that elected body who refuse to acknowledge the first paragraphs of our Constitution, and then city and local government who tells us that, we could recognize that it might be unconstitutional what we're doing, but nobody has sued us yet, so we're not going to change. So our work as the voice of Nebraska firearm owners is twofold. It's education, so advancing the awareness and knowledge of our citizens in regards to firearms freedom, as well as doing so at the elected level. But it's also holding these elected people accountable and ensuring that when they do fail to follow our Constitution, someone is making noise about it, someone's promoting that, and someone's declaring that publicly.
And so what kind of interfering laws are these cities putting in place?
Well, what's really interesting, we have two major cities in Nebraska that folks will often travel through. There's Omaha, which is pretty well known for the College World Series. It's a fantastic city, a great community. But within that city, there are firearms registration ordinances. There are limits on ages, which go well beyond state and federal law. There are other restrictions with regards to that they've tried to apply, but we've successfully countered, where if you were a lawful resident in the United States, whether before you became a citizen, they would prevent you from being able to register your firearm because you weren't a citizen yet, even though you met all legal qualifications in order to own a firearm. It's a laundry list. And then in Lincoln, they have a fairly lengthy list of misdemeanors which prohibit you from ownership and possession well in excess of federal and state law. And so, for instance, you can be a citizen with near Lincoln. You can get a permit to purchase, which is a requirement our state has, in order to basically prove that you've passed a background check before you purchase a handgun. You can pass that. You can get a concealed carry permit and pass that background investigation. And yet if you've done any one of these misdemeanors, you are actually prohibited from owning and possessing a firearm in Lincoln, even though when prosecuted, you aren't informed that your constitutional right is removed when you're in the city's jurisdiction. Wow,
that's an incredible trap that could really get people into trouble.
Well, and that's the challenge. We represent firearm owners, law-abiding firearm owners. We get told all the time that we must know and adhere these laws and ordinances, but so many of them are hidden within websites that cities put out with their ordinances, mixed in with, covenants with, whether you can have an RV in your driveway or whatever. And so we call these ordinances landmines. They're very difficult to know where to find as you travel throughout the state. You can be law-abiding on one side of one street and not law-abiding on the other, depending on which part of the city you're passing through. And so this year and last 3 years, we've been working really hard at passing what we call state preemption. Nebraska is one of the very few states in the nation that does not establish that the state is responsible for firearm laws and that they do not delegate that authority to cities and municipalities. But we fought for the last 3 years to get that passed, and we're going to continue to fight. But education is a huge part of it, and of course we have political factions that like to retain the ability to pass what we call those feel-good laws at the local level that don't prevent or inhibit crime and just basically infringe on law-abiding gun owners.
So, what? So you guys have been working on preemption. How's that fight going?
Well, we were really close, which when you get that close, it can be very disappointing. We had gotten it through the committee, which getting things out of committee at the unicameral can be challenging when it comes to firearms law. We got it through one passage of voting in the unicameral, and then unfortunately I won't speak ill of this national organization who came into Nebraska and negotiated with some police unions some amendments to this particular bill without any participation on our part in those negotiations. They had created an agreement that made the police unions feel okay about state preemption. But once the police unions found out that they couldn't use the sheriff's database for gun registration equivalencies, they backed out. And so because the police unions backed out, elected officials backed out of supporting the bill, even though they had been supporting it before. So there's a lot of education. There is a lot of politics when it comes to firearms freedom. It's one of the reasons why we have a grassroots organization in Nebraska rather than relying on national groups to come in and speak for us. We'd rather speak and fight for ourselves.
And you guys were saying on the website that you have more than 10,000 members, and that's a really big accomplishment. How did you grow your organization?
Good. We had some amazing founders who are incredibly passionate, and when you look at that passion across the United States, you can see organizations very similar to us. It takes a handful of individuals who believe and are committed to this effort. They can achieve some really amazing things. So I'm really proud to be a board member and to be able to leverage all that work, but word of mouth and going to gun shows and going to community events and going to Second Amendment days at major retailers, holding community events and inviting the public to meet with us and take advantage of some free educational training or seminar. We serve the community not just in the way that we advance firearms freedom, but we promote education and lawful and responsible firearm ownership. So we try to make ourselves an asset in the community. So you can find us throughout the state doing things for people at no additional cost. Our volunteers are amazing, and they demonstrate a ton of dedication to the cause. And we're also we have some engaging people who have some great connections that have grown over the years, and we'll continue to leverage that. But 10,000 isn't big enough. There's we could probably triple that in the next couple of years, as long as we keep going in the direction we're going.
Great. And you're doing these educational outreach things. What type of educational outreach are you guys doing?
Oh gosh, so we've partnered with other organizations and have done educational seminars on a range of topics. First, primarily educating elected officials, both at the state and local level, on effective firearms legislation, presenting information that counters the misinformation that exists out there that the anti-2A organizations like to use to either smear gun owners or create an environment that makes it feel like if you're a gun owner, you're a threat. We have done safety education. We've done safe storage education, things like First Shot program, where we bring families to the range and do a couple hours of safety and firearm fundamentals, and then we'll take them and introduce them to shooting on the range. Our organization is really involved with programs like the Women on Target events, and we also partner with other nonprofits like the Well-Armed Women shooting chapters in our state, which those ladies are extremely active, bringing free training to women and children, which we really have decided to focus on. Women are the largest demographic growing in the firearms community, and of course the next generation of firearm owners are just as important. So this year in particular, our members are wanting us to reach out to both those groups to expand our community and provide a way to sustain this community for years going forward. So we came up with some new strategies we're just going to start working on this coming year, and we're really excited about them.
Wow, that's really exciting. And so I always ask my guests if there are any books they recommend that all gun owners should read, either about shooting or politics, or any come to mind? Yeah.
Well, it's really funny. I remember, obviously listening to your podcast before, and I thought, okay, I'm a big reader, and I read quite a bit. And when I realized what I was currently reading right now, it kind of made me laugh, because people in the firearms community who may be aware that these two authors don't necessarily get along, and that's okay. Having an open mind is really important. So right now, I'm reading Defend Yourself, which is a comprehensive security plan for the armed homeowner, and that's by Rob Pincus. And I'm rereading The Law of Self-Defense, the Indispensable Guide for the Armed Citizen by attorney Andrew Branca. So both incredibly respected, depending on your perspective. I find them both to be reliable and helpful. And in my work with the community, trying to educate folks on the why you may want to consider supporting the Second Amendment and furthering our cause, as well as, how to be a lawful firearm owner. Both are really important.
Great. Well, put links to both of those on the show notes page. Where can people find you guys?
So you can find us on NebraskaFirearmOwners.org, and then on Facebook you can also find us under the same name, Nebraska Firearm Owners Association. We also are on Twitter and Instagram, and those links to those social media sites are off those websites.
Great. And let's see. And how can people help? Maybe folks outside the state. Anything they can do to help you guys out?
So when it comes to it, we find it really interesting. The folks who fight us here in our state, there's a couple small anti-2A groups here. They get a ton of help from outside the state, and oftentimes that sort of skews the perspective of our elected officials that many Nebraskans are possibly in alignment with their thoughts and feelings. We're proud that everyone that contacts us, our elected officials, are true Nebraskans. At the same time, if your state has passed or has recently passed or is going to pass what you think is an effective piece of legislation, we'd love to be able to share those best practices and those options with our elected officials, especially if it's been passed for a couple of years, to indicate and show just how effective that legislation is. So if you have great examples that you think can help Nebraska, we'd love to hear. You can email us at admin@nebraskafirearms.org. Great.
And how receptive? I know, growing up in New Jersey and talking to folks in New York, that, you try and educate legislators about, gun laws, and they'll just, either not see you or listen and not respond. But how responsive are your state legislatures when you guys approach them?
I would say that the majority are responsive, or at least open-minded enough to hear us out. There are a few select, what I would call hardcore let's just say they pretend to be 2A, but we call them the 2A butt. Those are the people who say, I have a handgun, or I have a concealed carry permit, and I support the Second Amendment, but the next word out of their mouth is but. And that's unfortunate. But I'll say this, from the perspective of the way our government works in the state, we do have a great opportunity to demonstrate and educate and inform and counter the misinformation. And because we're not as populated a state as, say, New Jersey or California, each citizen's voice is just that much more magnified. So when someone takes time to write a letter, takes time to make a phone call, takes time to send an email, or even better, takes a moment, drives out to Lincoln and visits our elected representative to spend 5-10 minutes, if you can present some facts and then leave additional information, you'd be surprised at how many times you can actually change people's minds. It takes persistence. It takes being positive. It takes being respectful. We're not here to create negative and contrarian relationships with people, even if we may disagree generally philosophically with their politics. At the same time, personal stories make a huge difference. When I talk about my own personal experience and why I became a gun owner and an avid enthusiast so late in life, it's really hard to deny that my interest in protecting myself and my children should be infringed. And it's those personal stories that make a difference. And our elected officials are Nebraska-nice in many ways. And so we can be effective if we just keep staying the course and being persistent.
All right. Well, Patricia, thank you so much for being on the show. Any parting words for our listeners?
I just wanted to share how grateful I was to have this opportunity and how proud I am to be part of this amazing firearms community across the United States. I would have to say that there is nobody nicer than the gun owner.
That's been my experience too. Well,
yeah.
Patricia, I thank you so much for being on the show, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you for having me.
Thanks again for tuning in to episode 86 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Show notes page for today's episode is outoforderjameskalita.com/86. And please remember to check out the sponsors, giftforgunnuts.com. That's giftsforgunnuts.com. And this is Out of Order James Kalita. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.